Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So, today we're going to be listening to a podcast with Aubrey Gordon from 2021. I want to see how her messaging has evolved over time. And as far as the actual title, why we seek thin privilege, I feel like a lot of times fat acceptance people, they talk about things in such a way that it's almost like they're in like a fantastical or like a fantasy based universe or something where different sizes of people are a different species, or like, it's like we're talking about the elves and the dwarves and like stuff like that a lot of times with how they talk about things, because they have to kind of really push this idea that you can't change this aspect of yourself. And I find it comical a lot of the time, and it's something I may play with a little bit when I get to the mids, which I think is coming really soon. I feel like I might have to call it even before getting out of obesity. It might be happening. So I'm going to just observe, watch and wait on things, but we shall see. We shall see. When do we call it on these social categories? I don't know. But let's go ahead and do this.
Hello and welcome to another audio version of Burnt Toast. This is a newsletter where we explore questions and sometimes answers on fat phobia, diet culture, parenting, and health. I am Virginia Soule-Smith. I'm a journalist who covers weight stigma and diet culture and the author of The Eating Instinct and the forthcoming Fat Kid Phobia. And I am so thrilled today to be chatting with Aubrey Gordon, who really needs no introduction, but I'll introduce her anyway, author of What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat. She is your fat friend everywhere on social media and the co-host of the very beloved Maintenance Phase podcast. Aubrey, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a delight to talk to you, as always.
I am very, very delighted, and I know my readers are going to be so delighted. So I am bringing you on today to talk with us about the concept of thin privilege, because this is a concept that I find is very hard for folks to wrap their brains around. It inspires, when I talk about it on social media, inspires a lot of angry comments sometimes.
So I definitely want to know how Aubrey defines that. So hopefully she will define it so I can understand, because like I've seen, she's been coming up a lot in the videos I've been making. So her reach goes far and wide. I'll put it to you that way. I called her, one of you guys died because I called her the high priestess of fat acceptance. I do feel like she is. So if they're going to talk fantastical, then we can too. And I think that we need to pay attention to her sometimes. Like, I need to know, like, just some of the roots of the modern fat acceptance folklore, because I think she really led a lot of stuff, especially after 2020. So I just want to see more clarification on what she means by thin privilege.
A lot of defensiveness, a lot of feelings come up around this concept. So, I'm hoping we kind of unpack it, and also in particular think about what parents need to think about in terms of explaining what thin privilege is to our kids. Because, I think part of the problem is people haven't heard of it till they're grown up, and it kind of comes out of nowhere at them, even though they should be more aware. So let's start with the basics. What is thin privilege? Give us a definition.
So I would say thin privilege, or like another way of thinking and talking about it, is how folks benefit from a proximity to thinness. So whether or not you feel like you yourself qualify, quote unquote, as like being really thin, quote unquote, like the closer you are to.
Okay. It's interesting because she's shifting it from what you are being to what you are close to being, which is it's different than I think most people would think about it.
looking thin, the more thin privilege you get. Congratulations. And that includes like many fat people, right? Like I actually have more thin privilege at about 350 pounds than someone who's fatter than me does, right? Mm-hmm. The idea is that the sort of closer that you get to thinness, the more you don't actually have to think about your body and your size in terms of how other people relate to it and treat it, right? You may think about it quite a bit internally, but
what would she say to people like in the modeling industry or people that are in very specific athletic things? Do they not think about their body or they don't have to think about it? Aubrey, that doesn't make sense as a definition. I think that she's struggling here because she can't say an objective definition of thin because it would require like saying someone who's not overweight, for example. And she can't say that because she has to act like there is no such thing as overweight. But there are a lot of people who are thin who have questions about their body, even people who are extremely thin who agonize over their body, if we're going to be real. So I don't think that that's a good definition because the way that she talks about it, it's like if the thinner you are, the better it is. That's not true. People have things to say if you're too skinny. People who are really, really skinny, they sometimes agonize over themselves, their body still. So this is not a great definition, but okay, it does reinforce. Like I remember when I was getting towards small fat, or I wasn't even getting there yet. I think it was like early, like a year ago. I made a video where I was worried about it. And I think a lot of my fears, they didn't end up being realized, but some of them did. And I do wonder about the mids. Like I said, I'm thinking about it a lot because I don't know what it will be. I don't really know. It's hard to predict. But based on the way that she's talking about it, I guess I should have more thin privilege being mid-sized. So a fat acceptance person would see me as in a higher position than them. Now, what I question is, what will it actually be in reality versus within fat acceptance folklore? Because while I do agree that different people in different categories socially are treated differently, they're not always treated better. And I've had a mix reaction in different phases. And I try to see if those types of things do affect other people in a similar way. But I had the invisibility of being mid-fat. I had the spectacle of being super fat. And I had the sort of expectations and things put on me from a small fat, but also the ability to be taken a little bit more seriously. So I feel like there was more criticism or like more scrutiny, I guess is the right word, being a small fat. But also, like I said, being taken a little bit more seriously than I was, and certainly visible again, which is big. I don't know with mid, though. I just feel like, I don't know. I really have no clue. If you guys have been mid-size, I would really appreciate how it was for you. Like, if you can describe it. If you can describe what it was like for you. Because I want to know what's coming as much as I can, even though I can't, obviously. And it's somewhat unpredictable. I'm just like, I wonder. Because every time I go through these shifts, it always hits in a way I didn't expect. So I feel like I'm expecting something like after my small fat transition where I was like, because it was kind of rough. I feel like this time I'm still like this, but I don't know if it will be that bad. So, and I wonder if it'll be more internal struggles because I think it's hard. I think it'll be a little bit challenging for me to not see myself as fat. So I'm like, that's weird, you know? So I'll have to see, but just let me know if you guys lost weight. I know there's probably a lot more people that have been mid-sized before. Let me know how it was for you or what you think about it. I would appreciate that.
Most of your struggles with your body relate to internal challenges and not to institutions rejecting you or individuals treating you differently, right? Someone with more thin privilege.
I still don't agree with that because it depends. Like I said, what institution she's talking to blanketed because there are still going to be, like I said, if you're in the modeling industry, for example, you're still going to have an institution that has something to say about your body, even if you're thin. So I think she's being too simplistic with this because it's not, she's trying too hard. It's kind of like she's too vague. That's the right word. She's too vague about it. And she's trying to keep that vagueness within what thin is so that I think it's so that she can use it against anybody. Because it's a way for, this is what I think it is. It's a way for someone like Aubrey to say, well, you're a small fat, so you have proximity to thinness, so you need to shut up if they say something that she doesn't like. And I do think that that probably would apply to the mids as well. But I told you my prediction of the mids is I think there's a very, very big personality contest aspect that I did feel creeping in small fat, but it wasn't as much as I thought. That's my suspicion. So let me know if I'm right about that. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's more of a small fat thing, you know? I don't really know what to expect. So I'm hoping it's better in some ways, I guess. I mean, I'm going there, you know? Even if it's worse, I'm still going there. But I think for me, it's going to be really strange because I spent so much time agonizing over my body and then I was okay, you know, and neutral. And it's like, on a personal level, it's just going to be that, like she said, it's just not talked about. It's not a liability or an asset. And I feel like that's really weird because I'm just so, I don't know. I don't know how to navigate that. It's like a blank space, basically. It's like, and I don't know how to think about that because I feel like I can do well being somewhat on the defense and I can do well being on the offense. But what is the in between? It's like, I don't know. Because I know a lot of people, they're like, well, you should feel proud. And it's like, but I don't. But I also don't feel bad about it either. You know what I mean? I just think it's an interesting thing. And I feel like for me, I'm so like, I like to be on some kind of a cutting edge, or I like to be like graphic, you know? That's my username. So it's like, I like that, like popping out vibe. And I feel like it's hard to stand out or to do that when you're mid. So that to me is where I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I'm worried about it. Like I'm like worried. So I feel like I have to have a me, like I have to have like me drums playing behind me. And like, I feel like it's just kind of like a little bit of an insecurity, but it's like a social insecurity. I don't know how to explain it But that's what I worry about. Like, I feel like I need like a freaking backtrack around me all the time because it's like I just don't know how to deal with the silence of it, the silence about it, and the lack of any kind of feedback from other people. That's going to be strange to me because I just spent so many years talking about it, obsessing over it. And then even now, it's like I do activism, and it's like, I don't think I'm going to have much to say about my body in the mid phase. It's like we have the moment where it's like, oh yeah, I'm not fat anymore. But then it's like, okay, crickets, like, and to me, it's like, I don't really know. And I'm going to have to deal with it. But I'm nervous, honestly. It does make me feel kind of insecure a little bit, just a little bit. It just does. Because it's like, it's going to be all on me. It's going to be me, just me. And I'm like, is that enough? And that's kind of how I feel. And I wonder if other people ever felt that way when they were approaching this, or if they ever felt that way when they were mid-sized. I don't know. Like, the thought is like, is it enough? That's how I'm questioning it. It's strange.
And me might not have to worry about strangers on the street shouting like, hey, fatso at them. Mm-hmm. Or they might not have to worry about whether or not a doctor will agree to treat them. Or they might not have to worry about if they get on a plane, will they be allowed to stay on that plane, or will they be escorted off the plane?
Those are some tangible things that I can understand what she's saying. And I do think those things are true. So I don't have to worry about any of those things anymore. So that's true. And there was a time where I did have to worry, especially the plane thing. I really wasn't sure. So I think there is some truth to those things.
Without a refund.
And like I said, even from mid-fat down, the freak show aspect wasn't really there. And it was there when I was bigger, because you do get kind of called out sometimes, especially online. But again, it's so different that I call it a spectacle. You're like a spectacle. So it's easier in a lot of ways from a branding standpoint, which I only talk about because I bring it up because I feel like that's why a lot of people that are super fat, they don't lose, because they subconsciously pick up on the invisibility or the less visibility of the mid-fat phase, and they don't want it. They don't want to go through that from a branding standpoint. So I talk about all these different incentives because that's another reason why you don't see people lose weight publicly often. You don't, because it's not fun all the time. And people get used to you being a certain way, and you have to shift. And here I am, the brat that I am, the disagreeable person that I am. I will just do it. But like I said, it's because you got to. Somebody has to. You have to show it because people don't think it's possible. So that's why it's like this mid phase. I'm like, I feel like it's really, really important because it's that moment where it shifts that most people don't ever show. So I'm like, I have to stay present. I got to keep going on here. This is really important. So it's tricky. But I do agree with her that once you're, like a 3X, a 2X, 2X, that zone, you aren't called out as much, at least not in the United States. It just doesn't happen as much as when you're like a 4 and beyond. It's a lot more. And I didn't really ever get called out in public, honestly, except for a couple times in California. Like, it did happen in Cali. But it never happened in Alabama, ever. But online, it happened a lot. I would get a lot of hate, and people think you're really dumb. That's one thing I will say. A lot of times people think you're really stupid when you're very, very big. I mean, like, very big. And I think it's just because it's a stereotype that people feel like people who are really big are just dumb. So they treat you that way sometimes, for sure. But also, you're kind of like, it's an interaction, right? So a lot of times when you're that big, you're in a survival state. You might troll. There's a lot of trolling sometimes and these types of things because it's the way you think about it at the time. It's hard to explain, but it's like you're just not as gosh, how do I explain this? You just feel like things don't apply to you a lot of the time, or it's just not the same. It's different for you. It's like you have this feeling of like, I'm just going to do whatever. It's like, because I'm just trying to get through the day. And I do think that effect is more blunted in some people, but it's more obvious in others. And I think for me, it was really obvious, where it was kind of like, holy crap, with some of how I acted. But it's also like, you're just in pain all the time. It just sucks. It's hard. It's brutal. And it's like, I think it gives you a different quality. And people are just like, oh my gosh, it's like that kind of attitude. Whereas all that stuff, that went away when I got to like a 3X. It would go away, but then I would just be not visible. And it's like weird, That's how it hit me, at least as an introvert. So it's weird. I called it the duff phase, but it's like they all shift. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I agree with her that people treat people differently, but I don't agree that it's always better. I think it's just different. And again, people stay at these different sizes for what they want because it's a choice. So people choose to be in that kind of invisible fat zone because they don't want to be visible. That's partly why people do that. And some people want to be a spectacle because it's easier to get attention. And so they get to that level, especially when we're talking about it from an E followed by the letter D perspective, which again, it can be very subconscious, extremely subconscious, but it's a part of it. It's a lot easier to get attention when you're that big. It just is. And especially when you're lacking in Riz, like me, it was easier to be that kind of spectacle. So I think people are like that a lot on social media. And I only bring it up because you have to think like, why are all these fat activists doing this? And I think a lot of them, it is a desire for attention. And it's an easy way to get attention. So I know that can be kind of cynical, but I'm just saying, because when you get to like 3/2X, it's like the music stops playing and the show closes and it's just kind of done and everybody leaves. And then you're just left to deal with that. And it's the same thing, when I got to small fat, it's like, it's different. You become like, people see you as more human and you're seen as kind of like humble, even if you're not. I feel like people, they want you to be nicer or they see you as nicer, even if you're not. So it's weird, but they also, they want you to be normal. I don't know how else to say it. They want you to be normal. They expect you to be when you're a small fat. So I feel like that's interesting. And I'll let you know about the mids. I will. But I feel like, honestly, what I perceive happening now is that sort of sheen of me being nicer in this small fat phase, that look at me of like, oh, like, you're kind of cutesy fat, like, you're sweet or you're nicer, I feel like that's going away. And I feel like as I get towards mid, my true like witchy self is like coming to the surface, and it's like dun, 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 you know, it's like dun, dun, like I see the dramatic music playing and I'm like, oh gosh, you know, because it's like I've been this way the whole time. You guys, I was this way the whole time, you know? But I feel like that's, you know, so I was expecting a lot more fighting in small fat, but maybe it'll come later. And all I can say is, baby, let the games begin, period. I told you. I told you. I try to tell people, I'm like, I'm not a nice person. And they're like, I don't believe you. And I'm like, okay, you know, but it's like, you know. So I feel like that's becoming more obvious now. As I go into mids, people are like really seeing me. And I think that that's hard because I feel like hiding is easier sometimes, and I don't think I can anymore. And it's like, oh crap, here we go. Like here we go again, you know? Anyways, let's continue. These are just my ramblings. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm working through some stuff. We're at the end of January. I'm working through some stuff. I'm sorry.
Without recourse and all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that folks in smaller bodies don't have challenges to work through with relationship to body image. I think it's really important to note that thin privilege is about how other people treat you, not how you feel about your own body, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can still have...
That's an interesting thing. I could see what she's saying there. I think that's probably a good point for her to have. Because again, it also... How can you quantify how other people treat someone else? Isn't that hard? That's tough. You know, and I think that I try to keep that, the social aspect and the social categories, we have to keep it subjective. It is subjective. There's always exceptions, right? There's always like these things that don't work out in terms of a concept like thin privilege. It doesn't always work, because it's so nebulous. And so I feel like when she tries to talk about it in this way, it's like, how do you know how other people are being treated? That's my question. You know, when I talk about these different categories, I talk about like my experience with it, but I understand that like my introversion is a major part of it, which again, I did do a video with Lisa a while ago where we talked about the extroverted version of Duff. Like it is different, called fat by comparison, you know? So it's different, but it exists. And sometimes there's going to be different stuff socially where it doesn't apply to everybody at all, you know? And I don't talk as much about the gender aspect because I can't tell all the time, because I have like a very strange blend of gendered expectations on me. It's very, very weird. So I'm just not the one to talk about it. Honestly, I can't, because there's a lot of stuff where it's more male oriented, and then there's a lot of stuff where it's more female oriented because I'm so feminine. So it's like, I remember I told David once, I was like, yeah, it's like, I'm kind of treated like a girl a lot. And he was like, how? Da, da, da. And I was like, well, I'll get downstairs. Like, I'll walk downstairs and my mom will critique my outfit of the day, how my hair is. She'll totally like break it down and be like, you're looking thinner today, or you're looking fatter today. Like literally, it's like boom, 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 boom. Like to me, that's very like, it's very kind of girly experience. So it's like, and then obviously romantically and whatnot, I'm in the gay world and I still am so feminine that it ends up being more similar to like a girly experience. But out in the world, not as much, but also still, yeah, you know, it's strange. So I don't usually talk about it in that way. And remember, weight is not actually a gendered issue. It really isn't. So I think it's important to understand, like, for example, if you're a woman and you're having certain issues, it might come down to being a woman, honestly. It might not have to do with weight. So I think it's really important to separate those things as well, especially with fat acceptance so overly conflating womanhood and fatness, especially these days. I think it's important to create that separation because, again, the the blessings and burdens of being a man or a woman, or in my case, being very feminine gay, it's not going to change based on weight. Those things are not going to shift. They're just not. So it's hard to, like, we have to separate that. That's why I don't talk about it as much, because it's like I don't really know. Like I said, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, because I still have a lot, like I said, in the gay world, it's very, very, there's like a lot of standards because that are similar to women, because you're still dating men. So it's still very visual. So it's like if I'm mid as a gay man, it's probably a very different experience than being mid as a straight man, because I do believe that most women probably wouldn't even care if a guy was mid-sized at all. I think it would be almost nothing. But being gay, it still matters, because it's like, well, you don't have this, or you don't have this, the snatched waist, or you don't have the abs, or you don't have this, the perfect ass, or whatever. You don't have that. You don't have this, right? So it's still like, it's weird. That's why, all I'm saying is that's why I don't talk about it as much, because I have such a bizarre blend. But maybe that's why I'm good to talk about this, because it is a bizarre blend. So it can kind of work. But yeah, I would just say, like, I don't know. I guess all I'm trying to say is these standards and whatnot, they're hard to, oh gosh, I'm having a low dopamine brain moment. Oh, they're hard to just pin all on weight and all on the concept of thin privilege, is what I'm trying to say. Because it's also like, even within romanticism, different people are attracted to different things, and weight alone is not always going to make or break a relationship. It just isn't. So it's just so much. It's just so much nuance. And I feel like she's trying to just like take that out of it. And it's like, it's so much more difficult than talking about like other things. Like talking about gay versus straight, or man versus woman, or black versus white. Those are a lot less nebulous than weight, which is so incredibly nebulous. It's like you literally lose a pound a day or something. It's like I'm literally struggling. Like, how do I figure out when I'm mid-sized versus fat? It's like I have to literally try to figure it out. And I'm trying to base it on social feedback. And I do feel like that sort of, oh, you're so sweet thing is going away. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to the mids now. My true self is coming through again. So that shows me it is changing a little bit. But it's like, it's just interesting. It's very interesting. So anyways, let's continue. Sorry. I have to go to the gym. You guys can tell I need to go to the gym. I'm getting very like run on me. But I'll be fine tomorrow.
Found body image struggles, but that doesn't actually change how other people treat you. Even with body dysmorphia, even with eating disorders, even with whatever you're working with, right? Other people still perceive you as a thinner person and treat you as a thinner person, regardless of how you perceive yourself. So that's what I would say. What did I miss? I feel like I missed something.
No, I think you hit on a lot of key points there. I think that distinction between like your own emotions about your body versus how the world perceives your body is that crucial distinction. And that's what makes it hard for folks who feel like, but I'm miserable in my body. So how?
It's so hard because I know that people are treated differently, but I don't think it's in the way that they say. And that's difficult. And the only, like I said, I talk about it because you go through that journey, especially starting really big, because we talk a lot on this channel. Why do very, very big people never lose? And this aspect is an important aspect because these shifts and changes can be really difficult for people. They can. And it can be something that people dread. It just is what it is. So we have to talk about it. But I still feel like they touch on it, but they don't do it, like they don't talk about it correctly. So it's very frustrating because we have to, in anti-FA, we have to provide something that fat acceptance was giving people. And that's why I try to engage with this type of stuff, because it's like it gives people a framework for how to navigate social situations with size. And we can't let them be the only ones. And that's why I'm trying to do it, or trying to figure it out, and trying to like map it out, which again, eventually I'm going to write a book with help from someone else because I don't want to do it. But I mean, I'm just saying, this is all like, I'm working on it. You know what I mean? I'm still working it out. And it's like, you know, it's weird.
Can I have thin privilege? But it's all the things you just said. It's that you can move through the world very freely, even though you might be tormented in some way by your body for yourself.
Totally. And I would also say it's like, it can be upsetting and call up defensiveness, in the same way that talking about any kind of privilege can, right? Mm-hmm. That like...
I know, but I literally just said it doesn't have that. It's too nebulous. It's really, 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 really nebulous. Like, more nebulous than anything else combined. Like, it's just so much. Like, it's so incredibly mutable. Like, they think of it as a spectrum. Like, let's say the spectrum of sexuality. That's how Aubrey thinks about it. But it's not true. Because you really don't shift that much. And with weight, you can go like from one extreme all the way to the other side. And I just don't think that kind of, you know, it's like within sexuality, if somebody was constantly, like, let's say they're a woman and they were constantly with women forever, and then they go to being constantly with men after a course of years or something, it's like they were probably bisexual the whole time. You know what I'm saying? It's like it didn't really change. But in Aubrey's mind, it would change, like in a weird way. Like, I don't know, like she would see it as you had to change. And it's like, no, like weight is just so drastically different from these other things. And they really try to make it the same thing. That's why I told you it's that kind of that fantasy world. You know, it's that like we have dwarves and we have elves and we have, you know, humans and this, like it's that type of mindset. And it's like, yeah, but the dwarf doesn't become a human, the human doesn't become an elf, like not typically, not in those kinds of stories, they don't. And I feel like she cannot recognize the mutability of this. It is mutable. It's something that changes, which is why it's weirder to talk about, because it can change. Because as I said, in a lot of ways, I didn't change. I haven't changed that much. Like certainly my level of being mean or nice, I will tell you for damn sure, it has been the same the entire time. But the way that people have perceived me in different phases has shifted. And that is certainly something static in me, because I've I'm a little bit of a fighter, but I'm not, I always say I'm not nice, but I'm not cruel. I'm a little bit more in between. And I feel like because I'm in between, different phases show me it's like I'm perceived more so one way and more so the other. It's interesting. And I feel like the mids, I'm going to be perceived as more mean again. So it's just interesting because it really doesn't change. Sometimes I act like to myself, I'm like, oh, I'm so different than I was. And it's like, you are, but you're also not. Like, I remember before my bra era, I was like, I'm trying to be demure, da, da, da. And my friends were like, how are you even trying? Like, you're not any different. It doesn't look like anything. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's a fail. Like, that was a self-awareness fail. And it's like, I wasn't even aware of how much of a brat I was before my bra era. And it's like, no, you are. And it never went away and it never stopped. And it's like, oh, okay. So it's just weird. It's just weird. That's all. It's weird.
Someone who has grown up white and middle class and remains white and middle class, right? I have been told consistently throughout my life that my accomplishments are my own. And I haven't really had to look at the ways in which the wind is at my back, right? And the ways in which structures are built to support me specifically as a white person and a middle class person, right? And I think this is a similar thing. It doesn't mean that you're less accomplished. It doesn't mean that you don't struggle with your body image. It doesn't mean that...
It isn't similar, though, because you can't become white. You can't become a different race. It doesn't change, so it's not similar. The financial side, maybe, it could be similar, I guess, because you can make more money, and you can certainly lose money, That would be a better, metaphor? That would be a better metaphor. And there could be ways in which society is structured to make it harder to lose weight. Like, it can be harder to have upward mobility within society based on certain structures. That would be a better comparison for sure, because it's still mutable. But still, it doesn't quite work because you can't look at somebody and know how much money they have. Whereas something like weight, you look at somebody and you pretty much know their zone. You know how they weigh. You know what I'm saying? It's hard. I think it's really its own thing, and they really try to make it the same as something else, and it really isn't. And that's why it is so neglected, in my opinion. Because I think because of their activism, they cloud it so much that you can't actually talk about it. And so then it's like, I'm trying to talk about it, and I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about it that much. So then I'm here, having a cringy moment towards the end of January with you all. But anyways, I think I'm going to have to let this one go for now. I will go probably the full hour tomorrow and such, and I'll just kind of do this until it's done. But I'm going to let this go for now. Let me know your thoughts on some of the stuff, because I'm trying to figure shit out. Honestly, I'm trying to figure it out still. Like, I've really, really enjoyed this daily January because it has really helped me to think a lot about this next year and this next phase. And I've really been shocked at my capacity, I guess. And it's inspired me. I do think I'm probably going to go back to normal in February, though. Sorry, y'all. I think it is a little bit unsustainable at the moment. And I want to, have things be a little bit more structured from February on. But it looks like I'm going to make it the whole of January, which I didn't know if I would, but I'm pretty confident. So And I'll probably do it again next January. I think it was good for me, or it has been good for me, because it's a lot of research. It's kind of like a blitz of research. And I've really enjoyed it, and you guys have been so supportive. So, yeah, but I'm still going to be here. I'm not ending or anything in February. I'm going to do at least 4 days a week. And then I'm thinking I'm going to do a day for members as well, starting in February. So, yeah. Because I think I'm going to cover some more forbidden topics with my members. Because, yeah, I'm going to have to. I don't think I can cover it publicly. Certainly if there's anything copyright related or something that's just really too hot or too risky for YouTube kind of thing, then I'll probably start doing it there. But I think we're going to have to do that for members soon. So I'm going to do that probably starting in February. So I'm still going to be 4 days, and then for members that'll be 5, and I'm gonna do it because I know what I'm gonna do this time, and I know I have the capacity, because that was the thing too. It was an issue of like, do I have the mental capacity, or do I have the ability? And I see that I do. So here we go. So anyways, you guys, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. We're gonna continue this. Thank you so much for everything. And I will see you guys very soon. Have a good one. Bye.